Chair Stargell, you're a rock. Thank you so much for being willing to stand up, not just on this issue, but on issues that are incredibly important to what I believe is a true silent majority. I appreciate that. I mean that. Senators, I rise in support of this legislation to explain not only why this bill is important, but why this bill is vital. Let me start by saying I believe life begins at conception. My faith teaches me that, and science is continuing to help prove that this is true. This bill is simple. It draws a clear line that after 15 weeks, and 96.6% of abortions in Florida are before 15 weeks, abortion is not an option. We've heard a lot of what ifs and what if this scenario and what if this situation, and here's what I know. There's no what ifs after an abortion. That's the end of the line. A life is ended, and there's no second chance or reset. And when it's done, there's no going back. And to me, that is far more extreme than anything we're proposing in a bill that's before us to vote on. These challenging discussions are often packaged in sterile euphemisms, such as access to health care and reproductive justice, shielding us from discomfort, allowing us to ignore an ugly truth. Let's call a spade a spade. We're talking about abortion, the termination of a pregnancy, the ending of a life. It's not natural, and it should be uncomfortable when we talk about it. Systematically dismembering an innocent child in their mother's womb and calling it medicine. If that's justice, then I'm scared of what injustice looks like. Why is there so much rhetoric around this issue, and why do opponents of the bill resort to euphemisms or Orwellian language? And it's because it's understanding what we understand who may support this bill, that we're talking about ending a life, an innocent child. It's not pleasant to put it in those terms, but it doesn't make us comfortable because it shouldn't make us comfortable, because that's what's happening, and we need to be able to say it if we're going to allow it. I want to speak briefly about the debate we had yesterday, and I want to make something very clear, that I have no doubt about the sincerity of our colleagues who may disagree on this issue on the other side and their intentions. I don't question that at all. I know where you stand. I do, and I know your heart. But the sincerity really does run both ways. I think some orchestrated type, and I'm not speaking on this floor, but I think it was heard in committee and public testimony that, there were a lot of folks that were insinuating, I know you don't want to do this. I know you really don't believe this. You're just doing this for somebody else. This isn't your agenda. I know your heart, you don't really want to do that. But I got to be honest, I know I speak for many when I say that I come by this very honestly. This is my fundamental and defining issue as a legislator, as a father, as a husband, as a devout Roman Catholic. My faith is what defines me, and I believe that life begins at conception, and I'd rather lose my next election than ever be wrong on this issue. I believe life begins at conception, and I'd say it again and again and again, no matter what the consequence. This issue involves at a minimum 2 lives. There's no way to separate that undeniable fact. In an awful situation in one life, I believe should not impose a death sentence on the life of another. In these discussions, I know science is on our side, because the advances in science, an unborn child can be delivered and be viable earlier and earlier. The heartbeat of an unborn child can now be detected as early as 6.5 weeks. In 1973, the same year that Roe v. Wade was decided, Congress recognized the national interest of protecting vulnerable plants and animals and passed the Endangered Species Act. That's right. As Congress decided endangered species deserve protection, 9 men endangered innocent children in the womb. That year, the first mobile phone call was made. An ATM was patented, and the latest computer was the Xerox Alto. In 92, when Planned Parenthood v. Casey was decided, the first text message was sent. If we have learned anything over the course of the pandemic, it's that science does not stay still. Ideas that were once considered fantasies become an everyday part of life. It's likely that in my lifetime, or in our children's lifetime, mankind will land on Mars. When those astronauts land on a red planet, they'll search for signs of life. Think about the phrase, signs of life. If a microbe on a planet 190 million miles away is celebrated and considered a sign of life, then surely a child in the womb could be considered a life too. Is it too much to ask that an unborn child on Earth be valued as much as a microbe among the stars? Life is a right that no government, no matter how powerful, tyrannical, or even well-meaning, should be able to take away. Without life, none of this matters, and there's no opportunity at all. We must acknowledge and respect the right to life and the dignity of the human person. And without the right to life as our foundation, every effort to tackle a societal problem in this chamber is like shouting into a hurricane. If we do not respect human life in the womb, why should we respect human life on the street? As an arm of the government, our first duty is to protect our citizens from harm, and surely allowing an abortion is first doing harm. And I do believe, and I can speak to this as a Catholic, I do believe that there is a distinction between the death penalty and abortion, because we are talking about a situation where somebody has done harm to somebody else and they're receiving a penalty for it, as opposed to somebody who was not even given a chance to do a first act and receiving a death sentence for that. So what does it say about us that an act of violence, killing a human being, an innocent child in a special place, is portrayed as a precious right? To speak only of the mother's cost ignores all thought of any legal rights to the unborn. I believe that the moral consequences of cavalierly accepting abortion diminishes the value of all life. Mother Teresa said, if we accept that a mother can kill her own child, how can we tell other people not to kill one another? And we're not leaping into the dark when it comes to policies and laws that recognize and protect a fetus or an unborn child, as I like to call them, as I believe. State fetal homicide laws. 38 states recognize the murder of a pregnant mother and the unborn baby that was inside of them. Most states, 29 of them, recognize that at the earliest stages of life. And the federal government has a similar law in place that was passed in 2004. The word choice gets used a lot in debate, but what about the child's choice? And where is their choice considered? It's not about being anti-choice. That's why I stood up for our right to be able to decide whether or not we wanted to receive a vaccine in this pandemic during the special session. I believe that we did have a choice to make there. But as a Senate body, we talk a lot about promises and protecting the most vulnerable communities among us. And a child in the womb is the most vulnerable person in the world because they're utterly helpless. They have no voice. They have no vote. They rely on another person for everything, and they still matter. I've been told, and this part I really want to focus on, I've been told, and I think a lot of us here, that as a man, we should stay silent on these types of issues. And I say that's ridiculous. I am a father of 3 children, and being their father is the most important thing in my life, more important than serving in the Army or in public office. I would argue that these attitudes that the father should have no say and men should keep quiet on these topics has done a heck of a lot of damage to our society. And can anyone look at the state of America's families and say that this is working? That we're having these arguments because things are going well? We need more involved fathers and men in general in this discussion, because if we want to solve many of the problems facing our families today, fathers have to be involved. Parenting is the most selfless thing in the world, and it's tough, it's imperfect, and it's sometimes very, very scary. But this morning, coming into the Capitol, I got to help build a Lego rocket with my son that we've been working on for months. In our RV last night, exhausted like all of you were, I got to dance to a really favorite song of my kids. It's the Trolls soundtrack. They love it. And then I crashed on our RV bed that my legs don't fit on because it's smaller than most normal beds, and now we're here. But loving them and helping them grow, that's the purpose, that's the mission of being a parent. And you know what? I wouldn't trade any of those moments for anything, and I doubt any parent on this floor ever would. And I know that parenthood is not all baseballs and ballet performances. So let's talk about other parents. Picture a young couple in a room with half-painted walls, blue or pink, a blanket and a bib with a name on it, a pile of baby shower gifts waiting to be returned, a sonogram photo of someone they knew but never met. For couples who have experienced such a loss, it's not what they lost, it's who they lost. Those of you with children, think back to when you found out you're going to be a parent. When you think about the first photo of your child, for people of our generation, it probably was a sonogram. It's incredible, and that's science. Think back to that picture and what you saw there. Was it a clump of cells? Was it some tissue? It wasn't. That's your baby, who you couldn't wait to meet. You picked out a name. You imagined what they would be like. You already knew them. You knew them while they were inside of your mother's womb. They were your pride and joy, and as parents, we're their voice. And if we don't speak for them, then no one else will. Thank you for bringing this bill forward, and I cannot wait to support it.